Like a silver streak across the midnight sky, our stories move with a brilliance and speed you will never forget. Experience high-octane drama and the thrill of a narrative that never slows down for anything. Click subscribe now and catch the streak before it disappears into the dark.
I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in my cap and gown, holding my diploma, while my mother looked at it like it was a grocery receipt she didn't ask for. Penn State, she said. Not congratulations. Not I'm proud of you. Just the name of the school in that tone she reserved for things that disappointed her. My sister had gone to Georgetown. I'd heard about Georgetown every day, for 4 years. I walked to my car alone that afternoon. My parents left early. They said they had dinner reservations. I sat in the parking lot for about 20 minutes before I started the engine. I didn't go home. I drove to a gas station, bought a bottle of water and a pack of peanut butter crackers, and ate them in the front seat. That was the last time I cried over them. At a gas station, alone, in a graduation dress, eating crackers. I promised myself I would never let them make me feel that small again, so I left. Not dramatically, not with a speech or a slamming door. I just started not going back. I accepted a job offer in Denver. I moved into a studio apartment with a broken dishwasher and a radiator that hissed at 3 a.m. I unpacked my boxes alone and ordered Thai food and watched a documentary about deep-sea fish and thought, this is the first night I have ever been completely free. I was 23. My sister called sometimes. My parents didn't. And, honestly, that was fine. My sister and I were complicated. She wasn't mean. She was just oblivious in the way that beautiful, successful people sometimes are. She never noticed the way our mother's eyes lit up differently when she walked into a room. She never noticed because she'd never seen any other version. She didn't know what it felt like to be the other one. But she called. We talked. Occasionally we got dinner when she had a conference near me. It wasn't close, but it was something. My parents and I had what I would describe as a ceasefire relationship. I sent birthday cards. I answered calls on holidays. I kept things surface level and brief, and never ever gave them anything real to work with. That lasted 6 years. Then my father called on a Tuesday in October. I was at my desk, eating a sandwich. I almost didn't pick up. We weren't a Tuesday call kind of family. Tuesday meant something was wrong. Hey, Dad! Hey, kiddo! His voice was strange, softer than usual. I put down the sandwich. He told me my mother had been having some health problems. Nothing specific yet. They were doing tests. But he wanted me to know in case things escalated. I told him I was sorry to hear that. I asked if he needed anything. He said no, just wanted me to know. I sat with that for a while after we hung up. I couldn't tell if I felt worried or manipulated or both. That was the problem with my parents. I could never fully separate the two. 3 weeks later, my mother called. She got straight to it. No small talk. She said she'd been diagnosed with something in her spine. Degenerative. She said the doctors had recommended a procedure, possibly surgery, but it was expensive and their insurance had a high deductible, and they weren't sure they could cover it without help. She said my sister was already contributing what she could, but with her new position, the move to DC, things were tight. I said I needed to think about it. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I said I needed to think about it, and I got off the phone and I sat on my kitchen floor with my back against the cabinets for a long time. Here's what I knew about my financial situation at that point. I had $34,000 in my savings account. I had $12,000 in a Roth IRA I'd started at 25 because a coworker told me to, and I'm glad she did. I had no credit card debt. I had a car payment and a slightly upgraded apartment. I'd moved out of the studio when I got promoted, and I kept a spreadsheet of every dollar I earned and spent, because the only thing that had ever made me feel safe was knowing exactly where I stood. I also knew this. I had never, in my adult life, received a single dollar from my parents. Not when I was a broke 23-year-old. Not when I had a medical bill I couldn't cover and quietly put it on a card and paid it off over 8 months. Not once. I thought about that. Then I thought about my mother's voice on the phone. I called my sister. She didn't answer. I texted her, "Hey, have you talked to Mom recently about her health stuff?" No response that night. The next morning, my mother called again. She said the procedure was scheduled. She said the window for covering the cost was closing. She said she hated to ask, but they didn't have anyone else. I asked about my sister again. My mother said my sister had already sent what she could. I asked how much. My mother said that wasn't really relevant. The point was that they needed more. I transferred $9,000. I want to be honest about why. It wasn't guilt, exactly. It wasn't love. In the simple sense, it was something more complicated. The fear that if something actually was wrong, and I did nothing, I would have to carry that for the rest of my life. I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for future me, the one who would have to live with whatever decision I made right now. I transferred $9,000 and I sent my mother a short text saying, "I hope the procedure went well and I'd be thinking of her." She replied, "Thank you, sweetheart." That was it. No update after the procedure. No call saying it went well. No thank you message from my father. Nothing. 2 weeks of silence. I told myself that was fine, that people recover from medical procedures and get busy and forget to call. I told myself I wasn't going to make this about me. Then my sister called. Not a text, an actual call. At 8 p.m. on a Wednesday. "Hey," she said, "I need to ask you something." Her voice was strange, careful. "Did Mom talk to you about needing money for a procedures?" I felt something cold move through me. "Yeah," I said. "A few weeks ago, I sent her some money. She said you'd already contributed what you could." Long pause. "I haven't talked to Mom in 2 months," my sister said. I didn't know anything about a procedure. I sat down. I made her repeat it. I made her say it again clearly, because I needed to hear it twice before I could process it. She hadn't contributed anything. She didn't know about any surgery. She'd been traveling for work, and her calls had been piling up, and she'd genuinely just missed them. She had no idea our mother had used her name. "She told me you were already helping," I said. "I wasn't," my sister said. "I didn't know any of this was happening." There's a particular kind of anger that doesn't feel like heat. It feels like cold, like the temperature in the room drops several degrees, and you become very still and very precise, and every thought you have is suddenly extremely clear. That's what happened to me on that Wednesday night. I told my sister everything: the call in October, the diagnosis, the procedure, the window closing, the $9,000. I gave her every detail. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'm going to look into this." She's always been methodical. Whatever else I can say about my sister, she does not panic and she does not guess. She was a research fellow before she moved into her current role. She approaches problems like data sets. Collect, analyze, conclude. She made some calls. She spoke to our aunt on our father's side, who we were both close to growing up. She checked in with our mother's doctor. She had the name from an old emergency contact form and managed to get enough information to confirm what she already suspected. There was no procedure. There was no scheduled surgery. Our mother had seen a specialist once, 2 months prior, for back pain that was described in her records as moderate. The specialist had recommended physical therapy and weight management. That was the full extent of it. $9,000, gone. Based on a story our mother invented and delivered so cleanly that I hadn't questioned a single detail. I want to pause here and tell you something about my sister in this moment. Because it matters. She could have been skeptical of me. She could have looked at the situation and thought, maybe she misunderstood. Maybe Mom exaggerated. Maybe this is a miscommunication. She could have given our parents the benefit of the doubt, the way she always had, the way the favorite child always does, because they've never been given a reason not to. She didn't. She called me back and she said, "I believe you." And I'm angry. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that until she said it. We talked for 3 hours that night, and somewhere in the middle of it, She started telling me things I didn't know, about conversations she'd overheard, about comments our parents made when they thought she wasn't really listening, about a college fund that had supposedly been set aside for both of us. She'd gotten hers at 18. She'd assumed I'd gotten mine too. I hadn't. I hadn't known there was a fund. My parents had never mentioned it. I'd taken out loans for Penn State. I'd paid them off myself over 5 years. My sister went silent when I told her that. Then she said very quietly, "How much did you take out?" I told her. She said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't know." I believed her. That was the strangest part. I actually believed her. Because I knew her, and I knew she would have said something, would have asked questions if she'd had any idea. She wasn't cruel. She was just sheltered by them from the reality of what they were doing. We started going through it together. Not just the $9,000, but all of it. My sister had always handled finances carefully. She kept records, receipts, documentation. And she started pulling things together. There was a loan our father had taken out in her name when she was in graduate school. He'd told her it was a formality, that he'd pay it off, and she'd believed him. He hadn't paid it off. It was still sitting there, 3 years later. The more she looked, the more she found. There was money our grandmother had left when she passed. A small inheritance, not enormous but real. It had been split between the 4 of us, supposedly. My sister had received her portion. When she asked me if I'd gotten mine, and I said I hadn't, she pulled up the estate documents she'd held on to. My portion had been deposited into our parents' joint account. I never saw a cent of it. She found that on a Friday night. She called me immediately. I was standing in my kitchen when she told me. I didn't say anything for a minute. I just looked out the window at the street below, at the ordinary people walking dogs and carrying groceries, living their ordinary lives, completely unaware that mine was quietly being rearranged. "What do you want to do?" she asked. I told her I needed a few days. What I actually did was spend those few days pulling together everything I could remember. Dates, amounts, conversations. I found the wire transfer confirmation for the $9,000. I found old loan statements. I found a card my grandmother had sent me when I graduated, in which she'd written that she hoped I would use the small gift she was leaving behind wisely. I'd thought she meant something sentimental. She'd meant money. I talked to someone at a legal aid office, not a lawyer yet, just an initial consultation. I wanted to understand what I was actually dealing with before I decided anything. What I understood was this: what my parents had done wasn't just selfish. Some of it was potentially fraud. The insurance claim implication, because my mother had said our insurance has a high deductible in a way that implied a real medical necessity, wasn't nothing. The inheritance money had a paper trail. The loan in my sister's name had a paper trail. There were trails everywhere. My sister and I agreed not to contact our parents until we were ready. We spent 3 weeks coordinating, documenting, organizing. She flew out to Denver on a weekend, and we sat at my kitchen table with our laptops and a printer and went through everything piece by piece. It was strange and it was intimate, and it was the closest I had ever felt to her in my entire life. She kept apologizing for not seeing it sooner, for being the one they chose, for the college fund, for the inheritance, for all of it. I told her to stop. "You didn't do this," I said. "They did, but I benefited from it. That wasn't your choice." She looked at me for a long time, then she said, "I'm going to make this right." I told her that wasn't her responsibility either, but I appreciated it more than I could say. We called our parents on a Sunday afternoon, video call. I wanted them to see our faces. My mother answered first. She looked comfortable, relaxed, sitting in the kitchen I'd grown up in. My father came into the frame a moment later. "Oh, how nice," my mother said. "Both of you together." Neither of us said anything. I watched her expression shift, just slightly, just a flicker of something behind her eyes. I had prepared what I was going to say. I'd written it out, revised it, practiced it. I did not yell. I did not cry. I said it clearly and steadily, the way I'd learned to do everything since I was 23 and sitting alone in a gas station parking lot. I told her I knew about the procedure that didn't happen. I told her I knew about the specialist visit and what was actually in her medical record. I told her I knew the college fund. I told her I knew about the inheritance. My father started to say something. I kept talking. I told them I had documentation. I told them I had spoken with someone about my legal options. I told them my sister was on the call and had seen everything I'd seen. My mother's face did something complicated. She started to cry. That used to work on me. I noticed it wasn't working this time. She said she hadn't meant any harm. She said they'd been struggling. She said she would have paid it back. I said, when? She said, when things got better. I asked, how long have things been bad? She couldn't answer that, or she wouldn't. My father stayed quiet through most of it. He looked older than I remembered. That almost got to me. Almost. My sister spoke next. She was calmer than I expected. She talked about the loan in her name. She talked about the inheritance. She talked about what we intended to do with the documentation we had. My mother said we were being cruel. My sister said we're being accurate. That was the moment I knew we were going to be okay. We didn't resolve everything on that call. We weren't there to make peace or reach an agreement. We were there to make clear that we knew. That's all. That the era of them being the only ones with the full picture was over. I hung up when I'd said what I needed to say. Not angry, not satisfied exactly. Just done. In the weeks after, a few things happened. My parents contacted us separately, trying, I think, to divide us. My mother called my sister with a softer version of the story. My father sent me an email that was long and painful and full of half-justifications. Neither approach worked because we were comparing notes in real time. We returned the money my grandmother had left me. With my sister's help and the documentation we'd gathered, we were able to work through the estate paperwork and correct the record. It wasn't a fortune, but it was mine, and getting it back mattered in a way that was less about the amount and more about the principle. The $9,000 is a different situation. I'm still figuring that out, but I'm figuring it out from a position of information, not confusion, and that feels like the most important shift. My parents have not apologized, not genuinely. My mother sent a card that said she hoped I could find it in my heart to understand they were doing their best. I read it once and put it in a drawer, and I haven't opened the drawer since. My sister and I talk every week now, sometimes twice a week. We're learning each other like adults, which is strange and slow and good. She told me recently that she'd been thinking about the graduation day. She didn't come. She was overseas that semester, but she'd heard about it from our mother, who apparently described it as a nice small ceremony. My sister had always assumed I was fine with how things went. I told her what actually happened. The parking lot. The crackers. The 20 minutes sitting alone before I could drive. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she said, I want to go back and sit there with you. I told her, we can't go back. I know, she said. I just wanted you to know I would have. That was enough. I'm not looking for a redemption arc for my parents. I'm not interested in being the bigger person if being the bigger person means absorbing what they did and calling it forgiveness. What I am interested in is the life I've built. The spreadsheet, the savings, the apartment, the sister I'm slowly getting to know, and protecting it. They raised 2 daughters who turned out to be better together than either of them planned for. I don't think they saw that coming.